if you can hear me without the microphone?
Yeah.
Perfect.
As always.
So, before starting my talk, first I would like to ask you if any of you like viruses. Are you great? Which one? The herpes? Like which virus do you like? You shouldn't be liking viruses. Yeah, I mean there is influenza, there is, Ebola, there's all these weird things. I mean, you shouldn't be liking viruses. But I was today going to tell you the story how I learned to stop worrying and love the virus. So, viruses are very, very nasty things. I mean, they are really small, and we are quite big, and this thing that we can think, we have a lot of advantages, but they can still take us all down. I mean, they are like super small, but they've got a very, very nice strategy. So what they do is they infect you, and when you are infected, you still have your cells, but they've got a new manager. So they use your cells for themselves. So, I mean, you can even make a joke of this, that it's a virus walks into a bar and asks for a beer. And the bartender says, no, we don't serve viruses here. And the virus replaces the bartender and says, no, we do. So, you can find a number of jokes like this with the viruses. And, I mean, the other way that they are doing is actually quite interesting. So, they use the cell machinery. So they replicate themselves and then they just explode the cell and they go for new hosts. Because they need hosts to survive. I mean, they are barely a life form. And you may also come up with an idea like this. For example, how many of you are science students here? Quite some. So assume that a management student or a business administration student comes to you, to the science department, and says, why do you want to be a scientist? I mean, you are going to work a lot, you are not going to earn a lot of money, social security is a problem, but if you become a business management, then you are going to have a lot of money and you will travel a lot and it's going to be fantastic. And he convinces you to be an administrator or a businessman. And then what you think is, okay, this is amazing, but everyone becomes a businessman, the school is shut down, you go to other science schools, and then you convince other people, and it goes on like this. So everyone becomes a businessman, but there is no worker. So this is kind of a crisis that why actually the viruses are making us sick. So they really infect the cells and they take over the control, okay? But I mean, over the years we developed methods to avoid viruses, okay? So some viruses, I mean, if you kill your host, then you will not be able to survive as well. So this is a bit paradoxical because you need your host to survive. So some viruses found a very nice way of overcoming this problem. So what they do is, so when they infect you, they don't immediately kill you. They insert their DNA sequence to your DNA sequence, okay? And what happens is that if they don't harm you, so they can stay there forever. They will stay there with you for a long time. And this kind of a virus is called a retrovirus, for example. And these viruses can also multiplicate themselves. So if there is one, for example, inserting, if it finds a chance, it will be 2, 3, 4, 5. It will go on like this. And imagine, if they don't have any harm to you, you are going to survive, they will be with you. Even sometimes they acquire functions. So, I mean, we will, throughout the evolution, we will gather and gather and gather more virus in our DNA. And what it turned out that they are pretty good at disguising themselves, okay? So there is hardly any way that actually the cells understand that this DNA sequence is a viral sequence. So this is why we gathered so many viral sequences in our own genome. So when human genome was revealed, so they realized 1.5% of the human genome has the information for proteins. And proteins are, what we know about life, right? We are seeing because, we have light-sensing proteins. Our heart is beating because we have got these contractile proteins. You can drink beer and you are not sick because there is an enzyme. I mean, if you're not coming from Japan, you get an enzyme or a protein that really pacifies this alcohol. So, I mean, what we know about life is encoded in 1.5% of the genome, and these viral sequences occupy 4.9% of the human genome. So one of the questions, I mean, they are so abundant, but do they have a function? Yes, they have a number of functions, and their function is particularly telling the proteins or dictating the proteins where, when, in which conditions, and how active they should be. Right? And this is very important information. Imagine that, I mean, this light sensor protein is not on your skin, it's on your eye. So someone or some sequence should tell them to be expressed only in the eye but not in the skin, for example. Or the contractile protein. If your skin is contracting, that's not very nice. So, we've got these retroviral elements. And one very good example is estrogen. So, estrogen is very, very important. It's one of my favorite hormones, for sure. So, estrogen is important for the ovary development. Estrogen is important for, like, if you have a lot of estrogen, then your, let's say, sexual desire increases. Perfectly fine. And there are also some reports that it increases aggressive behavior. I mean, I'm sure it's not you, it's just my ex-girlfriends who had some aggressive behavior, and I'm sure it was not me, it was estrogen. So, this is very important, and the way that it works is the following. So, there is a particular protein, or a receptor you can call, and this receptor binds to the these retroviral sequences, or retroviral DNA, in the presence of estrogen, and then it activates certain set of genes. And they change the development, they change the behavior. I mean, they've got a lot of implications. And for these ones, I mean, most of these binding sites, they are retroviral sequences. And there's even a better example where there is a protein in the human genome. It's called synctin. So synctin is responsible to make a particular cell, and this cell feeds the fetus. So all of you are here, all of you had a proper embryonic development thanks to these cells, okay? And the synctin is not a human protein. It's a viral envelope, a mutant viral envelope protein. So actually we are here, we are fine. We, like particularly mammalians, let's say, since we have these proteins, we can exist. This protein is very important, and it's a viral protein. So this is why I think it's very important to conceive that viruses are a part of us. So, I mean, we wouldn't be as we are without these viral sequences, okay? So they are really, really important. But, I mean, when you ask people, so what about viruses, not you, luckily, they don't like viruses. But, I mean, as I said, viruses are really important. And there was only one time in the human history that viruses were really valued. And this was 17th century Holland. I mean, the Dutch have sometimes a weird taste like herring, but what happened in 17th century, 16th, 17th century Holland is the following. So there were a number of sailors, particularly coming from Holland. So they were going all around the world, collecting plants, and they were trying to grow it for some reason in Amsterdam. And they couldn't succeed. They tried to grow orange just because of William the Orange, and orange didn't grow. But there was one plant that they managed to grow, a plant that was coming from Istanbul through Vienna, and it was the tulip. So they started growing tulips like crazy, and then it appeared that, you know, these tulips, I mean, you can see on the market as well. So these tulips started acquiring amazing patterns. Really amazing patterns, okay? So this is one example, but you should assume that they were like extreme, there was an extreme variety, okay? And the funny thing was, it was not like genetic that you have one plant, you plant this one and then it comes the same. It was just coming with a different pattern. So people thought, wow, this is amazing, like you got unique, beautiful patterns. So people started paying more and more money to buy these tulip plants with the particular patterns, and this was one of them, actually the one on the left hand side. So one tulip bulb, like one plant, for the money of one plant, you could buy a house in Holland at that time. it was that expensive. Okay, so what happened? The farmers and like everyone stopped planting kartoffel and cabbage, probably cabbage for the taste, but so they started planting tulips. The whole Holland was, it was full of tulips. They were making a lot of money, but the prices were increasing and increasing, and at some point there was no man who was rich enough to buy these plants. So what happened immediately is this like the tulip prices, they go up, and then there was a sharp decrease. Okay, and then people were not only poor because of money, but people didn't have anything to eat because they killed their potatoes, right? And they cannot eat tulips because it's toxic. So people in the 17th century in Holland, they hated tulips. So and the Sultan, the king of Ottoman Empire, was asking, why do we lose land in the to the Europeans? Why do we lose the wars? Because we were winning. What happened? So the first time in the Ottoman history, the Sultan decided to send ambassadors to Europe, and particularly to Holland because they were rich. And then when the ambassadors came back, they said, wow, there's actually a machine called a printing machine, and they read, they produce, so this is important. And the first printing machine came in that time, okay? After maybe 200 years after Gutenberg. And then, so the other ambassador was saying, well, there's actually a fire brigade in Holland, and this is a very good idea because we have fires in Istanbul as well. So it was the first time that the fire brigade was established in Istanbul. And the other thing, what the ambassador was saying, there is a particular plant that inspired people, that made people very happy, productive, and they were coming up with new ideas, and it is tulip. So let's plant tulip. So this era actually in Ottoman history is called the tulip era. They planted tulip everywhere. It was not anymore like fights and swords and anything. You can see the Sultan is not armed. He's armed, but not like before. It's like more, he's now having fun with the flowers. And he was spending so much money on tulips. And he hired dancers, musicians, and he thought, well, everyone should have fun and come up with some inspiring ideas, and this era is known to be the era of joy, like for the whole Ottoman history, and this was like the beginning of a particular culture. But it didn't last for a long time, for a particular reason. So if you look at the tulips here, like in any of the drawings basically, they are single color. They are not like the Dutch ones with amazing patterns and variety and like nothing special. So this is why he was trying to plant more and more to get these ones, and the economy crashed and he was executed. So, and this is so important in the Turkish history that if you look at the Turkey logo, the most recent one, you see the tulip. When we apply, which is a bit useless, but when we apply for the Olympic Games, it's the tulip. And even like if you go to a dinner or something, so generally it comes with a dining set full of tulips. So the tulip somehow became the symbol of joy since that time. But why was that? What was like how did this happen? It was a weird history that connects them. So what happened was this. So in 2000, some Dutch scientists, they found the leaves of these tulips. So they sequenced them. What they found was a virus breakout. So when they started growing tulips in Holland, so the virus breakout came, and then it was inserting its DNA in a very random fashion, randomly to the tulip DNA. So since it was random, for example, let's assume that there's a gene that is giving the red pattern. So the where and when the red pattern is going to appear was just changing randomly. So this is how they get these amazing patterns at that time. And what happened after the economic, when the prices went down, everyone chopped down the tulips. And I told you that the viruses need the host to survive. If there is no host, there is no more virus. So when the Ottomans started getting importing the tulips from Holland, there was no more virus anymore. So there was nothing to make these patterns basically. And this is, this was the time that the Dutch people were actually not paying for the tulips, but they were paying for the virus infection. The virus infected tulips. So this was the first time that, you know, we paid the viruses what they deserve. So this is, I find an amazing history. And then I also found that actually I was dealing with a virus for 5 years, and the envelope came out from this adenovirus sequence, adenovirus structure. And with that, I would like to ask again if you like viruses now more than before. Yeah, go virus, go! So thank you very much, and if you have any questions,
please ask them.
Please ask. If it is a historical one, I will be polite to the Greeks.
There is a question.
How do you recognize what sequence is retrovirus related?
So the retroviral sequences have certain patterns, and they change throughout the history, but you still you can recognize the sequences. So there's a way to reconstruct back, and I mean there are algorithms that it is possible to do this. So since it's a virus sequence, first of all the protein should be in a certain form, and if you know the protein sequence more or less, so you can also extract the DNA sequence from this one.
Thanks.
No problem.
Please, more questions. Who has a question?
So if we now want to make these very pretty tulips, can we actually somehow control these retroviral patterns, or is it still random?
So it is still random, but that's a very good business idea. So there's a type of virus, or it's not exactly a virus, but it's more like a transposon sequence, which is like a virus sequence, but you can control it. So I mean, I think it's possible to get some of these patterns back, but I thought it was a very original idea when I twisted it up. So.